The exotic Backfire SMG received a huge buff with Title Update 22, and on top of that, there were some other changes that actually made it even better. But with so many SMGs having got buffed, is Backfire actually worth using? But before I answer that, let's look at the buffs it received. The way that Backfire works is that hits build up stacks of critical hit damage. The buff it received was to how quickly these stacks build up. Before, I needed 200 stacks for the full 200% critical hit damage buff. Yes, 200%. This weapon hits hard, but now I only need 100 stacks, so roughly 2 clips. The downside to the talent is the bleed damage it applies every time I reload that hits me for half of my max armor. Now there are ways to use Backfire without triggering this, but for this build I decided to go the hazard protection route for bleed immunity, and there are 2 reasons why this is now a great option. Firstly, the change to stacks wasn't the only buff Backfire got in Title Update 22. Its mods also got a buff so that its scope now gives you 15% critical hit chance, up from 5%. So with just the weapon and Keena's watch, I have 46% critical hit chance, meaning I don't need to stack lots of critical hit chance elsewhere in order to hit the cap. So I can roll hazard protection onto my gear without any downside. The second reason is that certain brand sets that work perfectly with this build also got buffed in Title Update 22. Seska's 2-piece bonus got buffed from 10% hazard protection to 20%. Now its 1-piece bonus did get nerfed from 10% critical hit chance down to 8%, but by using this with just one critical hit chance attribute, I get to the 60% cap. The other brand set that works really well this build is Jarl. This comes with 10% hazard protection for its 1-piece bonus and received a nice buff to its 2-piece bonus to 10% weapon damage. In order to get those 2-piece bonuses, I am running the Ninja backpack because this also allows me to address the one thing I really don't like about Backfire. Its slow rate of fire at only 850 RPM. When you have SMGs like Dark Winter running at 1200 RPM, Backfire just feels very sluggish, so I needed to give it a bit of oomph, and there are 2 options for this. While in cover, the Umbra Initiative gear set builds up stacks that at max stacks will deliver 120% critical hit damage and 40% rate of fire, taking the Backfire up to 1190 RPM. These stacks are activated when you leave cover and will slowly fall off over time. Now personally, I don't like the playstyle of the Umbra Initiative gear set. Its 2-piece talent is completely wasted in this build because I'm at the cap already. Its critical hit damage scales badly because the build has so much already. And most importantly, the Striker's gear set shits all over it. Strikers delivers 15% weapon handling, 15% rate of fire, and 65% amplified weapon damage. This 65% amplified weapon damage is just way more effective than the 120% critical hit damage of the Umbra Initiative because it is completely multiplicative. It goes without saying that with striker builds, you should use the backpack wherever possible. Even with the nerf it received, its 25% amplified damage is still best in slot. But to get full immunity to bleed damage, this is one case where the Ninja backpack is the right option. I'm also not using the Striker's chest piece and have instead gone with a Seska chest with the talent Obliterate. This build will work best in heroic content, so I just won't get the most out of the 200 stacks the Striker's chest piece delivers. Check out this video here to see my testing on Striker stacks to see if it is worth it for you. The best way to roll attributes onto this build is to have one hazard protection attribute on the 5 pieces of gear I can, and then run one bleed resistance mod to get full immunity to bleed damage. The reason for this is that this also then gives me 90% hazard protection, making me nearly immune to fire damage and snares and any other status effects, which is very useful when running content. I am running this build with 5 weapon damage cores and 2 armor cores, but in reality you could probably run all red with this build for even more damage output. The only reason I'm not is that I haven't been able to get perfect rolls on the gear to do so. Indeed, most of the gear is not even optimized yet, so scale up any damage you're seeing to see its true potential. The Jarl piece of gear is a little bit painful to get, as it is a DZ exclusive, so you will need to farm some landmarks or run conflict to get it. A slightly less optimal build would be to run 2 pieces of Uzi Energetica for its 3-piece bonus of 30% hazard protection until you can get all the pieces you need. For skills, I'm using the Banshee Pulse and a Crusader Shield. The Backfire does have a pretty good optimal range of 22 meters, 7 meters longer than Dark Winter. But even so, this is a build that works best when I am up close and personal, so a shield is almost essential. The Ninja Bike backpack certainly helps with this, with its additional cores. It might be worth keeping the blue core on the old gear for the 2.7 million of health that the shield has. The Banshee Pulse is a great way to gap close and comes with the gunner specialization. This also adds 10% armor on kill and a 5% rate of fire buff on a kill, making it the perfect specialization for this build. So here is the full build. Now going back to the question I asked at the start of the video, comparing this build to a striker build with Dark Winter, with a similar strength shield, the Backfire build actually delivers more damage per magazine, more sustained damage, and has a longer optimal range, but it does do less burst damage than Dark Winter, so Backfire is very much a viable option now.